You're listening to Business Stories with Ryan Arcaracci, where I speak to business professionals from all walks of life. Thanks for listening, and let's get to it. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Business Stories podcast with Ryan Arcaracci. And as always, I'm talking to entrepreneurs and people in the franchising space, and it's always exciting to hear about new brands, new opportunities, and all the things going on in franchising. My guest today is Lance Graulich. He's with Ion Franchising. He is a franchise consultant. He's also had a rich history in franchising himself as a franchise owner. Thank you, Lance, for being here. I know you've got tons of stories to share and a lot of lessons to give us here. Tell us about you and how you got into franchising way back when.
So, I love, by the way, when you said I have a rich history. That's just code for Lance is old as crap and has been in this business
right
30 years or so, more than 30 years in franchising.
Yeah.
Somebody was doing something for me the other day and said, how many years have you been in franchising? And I hadn't been asked that question in a while.
Yeah.
And I started counting and I said, holy cow, it's like 34 years.
Yeah.
And I said, just say more, just say 30 years. That's plenty.
Right. Round it up. Yeah.
So I thought I was going to work on Wall Street for Dad. I got my economics degree from college. Dad's company was big over-the-counter trading house on Wall Street. And that's what I was groomed to do. And I did that throughout high school, college, just out of college. And then I realized one day sitting on a trading desk, hey, I can make a lot of money doing this, but this is boring as hell.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do this. So just so happened I had an uncle that made some money in tech and wanted to build a franchise company in the food business, in the restaurant business. And I had experience in that throughout college and high school as well. My dad had interest in restaurants. And that's what I actually thought I'd want to pursue, as crazy as that sounds. And my uncle said, I heard you're bored. Come join me in Arizona. Let's build, ready for this, Ryan? Let's build $1 billion restaurant group.
Mm-hmm.
This is 1989. He said, let's build $1 billion restaurant group. Now, fast forward, we got to 210 million or so within about 6 years. And most of it was TGI Fridays restaurants when Fridays was great. Average unit volume was 2.6 million or so. And we started some of our own locations, built them from scratch, and then also did a lot of acquisitions in different states, and then mixed in some new store development once again. And it was my sort of MBA in franchising. And I said, this is good. And he went back to go build other companies in Asia. And I skedaddled and headed out the door and started carving my own path in franchising, which we can get to next.
Yeah. So there are people probably listening who really don't understand franchising. I think they understand, maybe they have a very surface idea of business ownership, but franchising is different. It's nuanced. It's not quite, it is running a business, but it's different, right? So can you talk a little bit about the rudimentary steps or understanding the rudimentary breakdown of franchising and what it actually means?
Yeah, it's funny. There's a lot of misconceptions about franchising. Franchising is just like a business with guardrails. If you imagine driving on a road in a mountain and there's a guardrail there to protect you and keep you safe and keep you on the road. Well, that's really what a great franchise brand is supposed to do for you. Think McDonald's in the old days.
Yeah.
McDonald's, they're going to keep you safe. They're going to support you and teach you everything and give you a great blueprint roadmap to success. Unfortunately, when people look around at options, because, I grew up in a family, there was a lot of business ownership. There was Wall Street, as I mentioned, and then there was real estate. Yeah. Those three are the three pillars, if you will, of investing. Yeah. And I realized that business ownership was my favorite. And within business ownership, you can start your own business, which is incredibly hard and dangerous, which we could talk about. I did, and I was very successful at that. I was a little crazy at the time. You can buy an existing business, which is great, but regardless of what everybody tells you, it's incredibly difficult to find the right business for you in your neighborhood to do. So franchising is the best option, and it's literally a licensing deal to follow somebody else's blueprint to success. But you got to go in with your eyes open, because just like getting married, I made a big mistake the first time I got married. Thankfully, I found the perfect woman the second time around.
Right.
But there's a lot of people that make mistakes, not only with marriage,
Yeah.
but with business ownership the first time around. And people can pick the wrong franchise for them, which is where franchise brokers and consultants like myself come in.
So when you talk about that, when you talk about picking the right franchise for them, what are all the different elements we look at? I mean, and, you want to do something you're going to be passionate about and you want to
Yep.
be good at it.
Yep.
You want to enjoy it because you don't want to do something for the next 10, 15, 20 years you can't
Yeah.
stand. People are doing that now with jobs, right?
Absolutely.
So talk about guiding someone through that process, that decision, and what are some of the things they need to think about?
Yeah, I talk about understanding what somebody's what is, not their why, their what.
Yeah.
Their whys are generally about the same, but the what is your investment? Do you have 50,000 cash? Do you have 100,000 cash? What kind of cash do you want to put in something? Because most people do want an SBA loan and they want to be able to leverage other people's money. Same
Mhm.
thing in real estate. You want to leverage money. People are usually not putting all cash into deals.
Yeah.
So, what is your investment? What are your interests? What are your interests? And I like also breaking down the misconceptions, because some people, maybe that were in medical or healthcare related stuff for an occupation, decide, oh, I don't want to do senior care or home care. I know too much about that,
Yeah.
although that's a great industry. So, breaking down some of those misconceptions, but what are your skills? What are your skills? What are you good at? What are you not good at? Those are very important things. For example, Citywide Facility Solutions, amazing franchise brand, still family owned and operated since the 60s.
Yeah.
If you, if you, the owner, do not have sales experience, they do not want you as a franchise owner. They don't want you. Nothing bad. It's just they realize that their most successful owners have sales experience. Well, if you use that idea of a very mature brand like Citywide, there are brands that maybe haven't figured out who's not successful in their brand, and they might like you and think you're going to do great, and maybe it's not even necessarily their fault, because they haven't matured enough to understand who really is the best franchise
Hmm.
for our brand. Who is the template that we're looking for? What is the template we're looking for?
Yeah.
So I mentioned a couple of those what's, and really what is available for you in your area, but really it's your skills, your budget, and then also your role. What will be your role? Most of the time, a franchise owner is going to be an owner operator and be hands on. You don't have to do all the dirty work if it's in a plumbing business. You might not even know about plumbing. And I could tell you funny stories about uh, successful franchisees that knew nothing
Yeah.
about the business that they were getting themselves into.
Yeah.
But those are just some examples.
Yeah. If you look at, I mean, if someone's listening and they're in their journey of their career right now, but they might be at a point where they feel like I've outgrown my career or I know I can be independent. I'm just worried about it. Um, let's say I've done sales for years, or maybe I've done some side business, side hustles or something.
Yeah.
Um, you know, at what point should you really start to say, look, this is something I really need to consider? I mean, and people are thinking about, family, they're thinking about their future, they're thinking
Yeah.
about their age, they're thinking about aging out of the workforce. There's all these things people think about, right?
Yeah.
So how do you advise people to sit down and go, is this the right time? Is this the
Yeah.
right place for me?
Such a great question.
Yeah.
And the my mom and I used to always have this discussion. There's
Yeah.
never a great time for anything.
Yeah.
There's just never a great time. If you're going to wait for the right time to get married, to get divorced, to
Yeah.
find a business, to leave a job, to move jobs, whatever, there's never a right time for anything.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm going to tell you. You see a lot of successful billionaire founders of tech brands these days, like Mark
Yeah.
Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and whatever. And in some cases, some of those brands took quite a long time to develop. Apple is one of the most famous
Hmm.
companies and founders, and Steve Jobs and Wozniak starting out of a garage.
Yeah.
When you're young, you have nothing to lose. Nothing, because you're still stuck in your parents' house and with
Yep.
no money and, no mortgage anyway. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So the truth of the matter, here's the truth for everybody listening. If you're 45 and have a family and a spouse and kids and what have you and a mortgage, it makes it tougher
Yeah.
because your brain immediately goes to, well, I have to be successful. If I fail, I'm doomed. If I fail, I'm doomed. So the reality is that's why you pick a franchise, because there are plenty that I deem safe, because you're going to be able to go through the process with me. Yes, I am holding your hand on this journey. And through this process, you'll get a copy of the brand's franchise disclosure document. You'll know how many closures they had. Are they growing? Are they retracting? What their item 19 is, which is the earnings claim.
Hmm.
You'll know what kind of sales or revenue, in some cases, even margins, you'll know what the average franchise owner does.
Hmm.
And then you'll have an opportunity with the greatest brands to have conversations with existing franchise owners about their experience.
Yeah.
So as you hear positive things and positive feedback, uh, my friend Aaron joined a senior home care brand. Um, he named Home Helpers. And I'll never forget when he got off the phone doing validation, speaking to a successful franchise owner. Aaron told me that this owner net almost 900,000 in income by the end of it was like 2.5 years in.
Hmm.
And as soon as he started hearing things like that, he's like, sign me up. It's like,
Yeah.
all right, calm down, talk to a few other owners.
Yeah.
And he became one of the most successful first year franchisees that brand has ever seen. Some people have it, some people don't. But here's the reality in that. I said to Aaron, like I do all of my clientele, where are you in life?
Yeah.
Are you average? Are you above average? Are you way above average? Are you below average? And I get people to understand where they are. Most people say they're above average,
Hmm.
but even if you say you're average, when you look at the item 19 in the FDD, and it shows the average franchise owner is doing $1.5 million in revenue, and it's a
Hmm.
$150,000 investment, and those are the realistic numbers of a typical senior care, home care brand, mostly
Yep.
non-medical home care that almost anybody can do.
Hmm.
When you hear those numbers, the only question becomes, what's the ramp up period? If I jump out of my job,
Hmm.
when do I start, when do I stop losing money? Because smart people know that when you get into a business, you're spending money, spending money, spending
Right.
money. But there's a number you have in mind. Maybe it's 150,000 is all I need in the first year. And then your marketing investment causes revenue, which causes some profits to fall to the bottom,
Right.
which means I just broke even. I'm cash flow positive,
Yeah.
and you can do that in a lot of brands fairly quickly. It's not like the restaurant business where you hope to be cash flow positive in a couple of, well, I mean, you can do it in a couple of months, but in some instances, it's a couple of, could be a couple of years depending on what kind of business you're in.
Right. Right. So I think people have this view of franchising that it's really just food. Like when people who don't know franchising think about franchising, they think McDonald's,
My favorite question.
Burger King, right? But there's over, and you and I know there's over 3,000 or
Yeah.
3,500 or so franchises out there.
Yeah.
And as we look at where people are, I mean, I know we've got the new president now, and we've got things changing economically. But you know, where do you see opportunities growing in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of
Yeah.
technology and the other new brands coming up? Like, what are you hearing out there? What are you seeing as what looks to be successful for the future for people
Two of
looking?
my most favorite segments of franchising, a lot of people just think of McDonald's and all the big box retail
Yeah,
restaurant franchises because they're in our face every day. Great Clips hair salons, Sport Clips,
yeah,
Massage Envy, European Wax Center, and all the restaurants we know. The reality is senior home care is an amazing space every day. Another 15,000 Americans turn 65.
yeah.
I probably represent 25 senior home care franchises. The other big category that's talked about often is home services.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get into an air conditioning or plumbing brand, and you don't need to know anything about the business. They're looking for smart people that'll pay attention. My favorite story, by the way, on that
Yeah.
is of not being a technician. Is I had a friend that was bald and did not know how to cut hair, and
Yeah.
he owned 19 Great Clips hair salons. When he first heard the idea,
Yeah.
you might as well have been talking about air conditioning, plumbing,
Yeah.
electrical, anything, but flying a plane for that matter, because he didn't have that skill or
Yeah.
those skills.
Right.
And yet he did it and became very successful with a substantial cash flow and was able to scale it, fairly easily. Some of it was acquisitions of
Mm-hmm.
poor performing franchisees. And that's the theme here in this conversation, that while most people can do it, there are some people that get into a franchise that can't.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got to ask you too, with people, there's people listening that might say, well, how could I be successful at something that I have no experience in? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and I know it comes down, I mean, I want you to elaborate on it because I know it comes down to listening, following the process,
Hmm.
and understanding the operations because you're managing the operations and you're overseeing everything.
Yeah.
But talk to us about like how can someone evolve into that?
So let's talk about professional sports. There's a
Yeah.
percentage of coaches,
Yeah.
great head coaches for NFL, football teams or basketball teams and baseball teams,
Yeah.
that not only did not play that professional sport, but even if they did, they weren't even very good.
Yeah.
So the reality is, while it seems important
Yeah.
to go to be a coach, or in this case, an owner that knows it all, you don't have to learn all the minutia about cutting somebody's hair to be a successful owner in a salon.
Hmm.
What it breaks down to in any business, why do people go to a Great Clips? I knew the original head, excuse me, I knew the original head of marketing and brand development for Starbucks.
Yep.
And he and I spent a lot of time together in the old days. And he used to talk to me a lot about the essence of the Starbucks brand. And while Starbucks is not a franchise system, there's an essence to every brand of who will be successful in the
Hmm.
brand. And at the end of the day, everything at Great Clips, when you distill it down, can be taught. And it's none of it has to do with the quality. The end result is the quality of the haircut
Hmm.
that somebody gets, but it's the V. I always do the V, the value.
Hmm.
What value do you get? You're not spending $50 on a haircut at Great Clips. Maybe it's up to that now in LA in some areas,
Hmm.
but in Vegas, I'm paying $23
Right.
probably at my friend's Great Clips down the block.
Yeah.
But you learn the business of the business. People have heard the expression of you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, you're hiring technicians to do the work for you. This
Hmm.
is also a secret, Ryan, and as to how you scale, because a lot
Yeah.
of people think it's this mystery. How do you scale? Krispy Kreme donuts. I was a franchise owner with a partner. We owned 2 states for Krispy Kreme. While I was decent at making donuts, I was not that great. And I had a lot of really good bakers.
Hmm.
And guess what? It was a very rare occasion. I would have to go back in the kitchen area, so to speak, and start helping them make donuts.
Hmm.
If anything, I might help them do one part of that. So
Yeah.
in a Great Clips, if you're in a hurry and you're busy, maybe the owner will sweep a floor or
Hmm.
ring up people at the cash register or clean up between people and the chairs and what have you in
Yeah.
between. But at the end of the day, the technical aspects, it's still customer service, it's still marketing, and most importantly, is building a fabulous culture with your staff. And
Hmm.
that's a whole other conversation we can have, because
Yeah.
scaling a business is about your people and
Yeah.
having enough of them performing well that you don't have to watch them 24/7, and they're going to perform the duty to the highest standards whether you're watching them or not.
Hmm.
Very important. And then
Yeah.
your leadership to be able to learn how to manage from afar, because any knucklehead can run one of anything to a degree.
Yeah.
But running two, you can't duplicate yourself.
Hmm.
And running three, especially in any city in America, to run
Yeah.
three, you're going to have only a short period of time available at any of those three locations. And that's when you really grow up as a leader.
Hmm.
And it's leadership skills that carry you. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit too, like about the clients you've had, the stories you've had with people you've worked with. Can you walk us through what you've learned in seeing the successful ones really thrive? And can
Yeah.
you share some stories about that too?
Well, I saw a lot of that when I was a franchisee many
Yeah.
years ago because I was a franchisee of Wingstop in the
Hmm.
early days. And, a guy named Charles was the very first franchisee of Wingstop. And when I joined, I was location number 60 or so.
Hmm.
And, and Wingstop was not pretty at the time. There was a new ownership team that took over. If you looked in the franchise disclosure document, the average sales that they disclosed was about 600,000 in revenue, which was not much with a brand that sold only chicken wings and fries and side dishes,
Yeah.
and it was a really high food cost that was also disclosed. So it was not a good look when a lot of people first looked at Wingstop. But one of the big skills of all entrepreneurs, whether it's you're a future entrepreneur or you're already successful doing something in business, is being a visionary and
Hmm.
having a vision. So a lot of people that looked at Wingstop like me and jumped in and said, this is going places.
Hmm.
And we helped fix it up. But as far as stories, the first story or lesson out of that is a lot of people looking at franchise disclosure documents today. I had a gentleman, a client, look at a couple of franchises the other day, and he looked at the FDD, the disclosure document, and he said, yeah, the numbers don't look that great. I said, it's not all about the numbers. Do you
Yeah.
think the brand is going places? Does the owner or leader's story, the brand president's story, match up to what you're seeing? And is it a niche that fascinates you that you think is going to grow going forward? And I didn't push him too hard
Hmm.
to have phone calls with the brands or continue in that process because I think there are other great brands he should consider as well. But it's also possible a lot of my clientele come back to a particular brand
Hmm.
because a lot of brands initially, it's like my friend when he was exploring Great Clips. He passed on that in the first place. It
Yeah.
sounded awful.
Yeah.
Why would a bald guy, no hair, no ability to cut somebody's hair,
Yeah.
why would I own a hair salon? There's
Right.
got to be something better for me.
Yeah.
This is also why, Ryan, people always seem to go to restaurants
Hmm.
because they assume, well, I eat in restaurants.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to be a pretty good franchise owner.
Yeah.
But here's a story for you. There's a gentleman I knew when I got into Wingstop that didn't have any experience in the food business. And that's very common. But the food business is quite different than the hair salon business
Yeah.
or air conditioning because it requires a lot of employees and there's a lot of variables, a lot of shifts. You're open a lot of hours.
Yep.
It's really exhausting. And he ended up losing a lot of money in the beginning. Now, the good news is he had money, so he lost a lot of money. And, he hit the bottom and made it. He
Hmm.
made it. He made it because he had money. But there's a big learning curve in the restaurant business because unfortunately there seems to be more ways to lose money than make money.
Hmm.
So I always tell people there's nothing wrong with the restaurant business, but you better have a lot of money in working capital. Um, Still follow the whole system with validation and follow your gut with all that and
Yeah.
pencil out your business plan and understand how much money you truly need. Nobody gets rich with one restaurant either. So you're going
Yeah.
to plan on doing multiple units.
Yeah.
So, and restaurants aren't cheap, you're talking $400,000. In the old days, the least expensive wing stop I ever did was probably 325,000, and that was
Hmm.
years ago.
Yeah.
Nowadays, they got to be a half a million easily to open one, easily.
Right. Right.
So yeah. So, but as far as stories, uh, there are plenty. If you don't have experience in the business, there is going to be a learning curve. But the
Hmm.
idea is, I'll tell you a story about an air conditioning guy. So a guy comes to me, young guy.
Hmm.
He goes, "Can you talk to my father?" I said, "Sure. What are we talking about?" Well, He didn't want to do a franchise because he didn't want to pay the franchise fee. I
Mhm.
said, so what is he doing? He goes, well, he started his own air conditioning company, didn't know anything about it, but knew it would be a great business, recession proof, all this.
Yeah.
So I speak to them on a Zoom call. Turns out dad has been in business over 8 years and he's very proud of himself. Over 8 years in the business, he's over 800,000 in revenue. He makes great money and he's very happy. But he doesn't understand or see how he's going to scale this thing to the
Mhm.
next level,
Yeah.
which is normal for people that have no experience that do it all by themselves. So I said, why didn't you do a franchise? He goes, well, I don't want to pay the $40,000 franchise fee. So, well, what if I told you if you paid that franchise fee, like a Tony Robbins mastermind? Why do experienced people pay Tony Robbins or other personal development gurus or groups? Why
Yeah.
do people pay to get into a mastermind?
Yeah.
A mastermind, and in some cases, they're paying 50,000. I had a lady, Kelly Roach, on my podcast. Kelly's awesome. This is an $80,000 mastermind. And you get into that and you're with people that are more successful with you or sometimes less, but you get to learn from those people. And
Mhm.
the idea being that a rising tide raises all ships. And these people aren't necessarily doing what you're doing. When you join a great franchise, it is like joining a mastermind, and you will learn exactly how to do these things from people that have already done it bigger and better than you. So I say to this gentleman, you could have joined my favorite air conditioning franchise, paid that fee. In fact, you would have gotten a discount if you're in the industry because they want you to convert your business to join them.
Yeah.
You, first year franchisees at that particular company do 750 to over a million in revenue. I
Mhm.
told I told them first year franchisees. So what it took you 8 years to do, according to what you can validate with 1 hour heating and air conditioning, you could have done that in your first year or more.
Wow.
So that's why you join a franchise. Speed and support and the history.
So I want to ask too the role of a franchise consultant because I work with a lot. I think, I work with a few that are new and I work with a few that are very successful. And I think you're one of the more experienced, more successful ones in the world of consulting.
Mhm.
And I want to ask you
Thank you.
because I
I'm
try,
just
sure,
old.
you're welcome. You're welcome. But I always try to coach them on their strategy for being successful in franchise consulting. And I'm more on the technology side, but I want to get your take on what you have learned at your level
Yeah.
because franchise consulting is I don't want to say it's a saturated market, but there's a lot of consultants out there and a lot of them come and go, but there are a few, a handful, a small percentage that do it very successfully for a very long
Yeah.
time, right? What do
Yeah.
you why do you think that is and what have you learned from your success with it?
Yeah. I think number one, you have to love what you do.
Yeah.
And even in the examples I gave you of great clips and air conditioning, 1 hour heating and air conditioning,
Yeah.
people that don't necessarily know anything about some of those industries, you can still love to learn what you do, love to basically love to do what you do,
Yeah.
even though you didn't have experience with it and you didn't plan it your whole life.
Yeah.
So, number one, I love what I do. I love helping people get into business ownership.
Yeah.
When I sort of retired from owning franchises and businesses, I knew I couldn't do nothing for the rest of my life. I
Yeah.
needed to do something. And a couple of my friends in the franchise space, especially my friend Michael, that's owned franchises for over 30 years, still does. He's the one that said, you need a podcast, which I started. It's called Ion Franchising, EYE on Franchising. And you should be a franchise broker or consultant, which the terms are synonymous.
Yeah.
So I became that, but I really love what I do and I love helping people. I never sell anything. If anybody listening has ever watched that silly show my wife loves, The Bachelor or Bachelorette,
Yeah.
that dating show, they always talk every season about being vulnerable and sharing their deepest, darkest thoughts and
Yeah.
secrets or whatever. Sort of in a weird way, it's what I do when I have conversation with people. Initially, people aren't going to tell me all of that.
Mhm.
But my goal is to build a rapport with people, get to really know who they are and understand what they like and what they don't like. I ask questions like, what did you want to do when you were in high school?
Yeah.
What did you want to do with your life at that point? Oh, you went to college. At that point, when you were graduating college, what did you want to do? What did you feel like you should be doing? And a lot of times it'll come up what their childhood dreams were, a lot of
Mhm.
things that their parents put on them, or if
Yeah.
they grew up with a single mom, what their single mom always wanted for them. And maybe in some cases, it was all about just getting a good job,
Yeah.
which in most cases it is. So I take all that and I have a great free assessment that is on my website. It's all over the place, but that free assessment helps me understand, based on your mindset, skill set, and life experiences, what brands could be best for you. And I use that as a tool. Not
Mhm.
everybody has to take that, but it is a great tool and you get a great report on yourself. But in these conversations, truly building rapport and trust, my services are also free. I get paid by the brands. So if you never met me and went to any of these brands, first of all, you spend a lot of time talking to people you should not be talking to.
Mhm.
And I protect you and save your time, save your trouble. And most importantly, I don't want you getting into the wrong brand. It's incredibly costly. And today I get pretty much most of my business through referrals, although I'm on TikTok and Instagram and do a lot of fun things.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of referrals from that. YouTube, I have 3 different YouTube channels. Franchise Road Trip is my latest show where I love to give people the in-person feel because I go visit franchise brands and kind
Yeah.
of give you a day in a life in 15, 20 minutes or so.
Yeah.
But again, I work with people for free and I just want to help. And I even talk to people after they become franchise owners for free and see how they feel. I have a relative that's not even 30. Pardon me. He got into the air conditioning business and
Yeah.
he's open for business now, just opened. He already has his 2 vans and his 2 techs, and he's doing his business full time. Some people keep their day job, and some
Yeah.
people, there is a strategy for that. There's a lot online, Ryan, about people that you can't work a business part time as a side hustle. You can. Again,
Yeah.
it depends on your skills,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. No, I feel it. I think a lot of times you get to a point in a job or a career where you feel like, you get, I don't want to say comfortable, but maybe you get to a point where you hit a brick wall and you're like, am I gonna stay at this level when
Yeah.
I know deep inside I could be doing so much more?
You
Uh,
know, you brought up that earlier, and I didn't address it fully,
yeah.
and I need to because
Yeah.
this is really, really important. There are true pain points that people experience, and it's usually these two categories. Number
Yeah.
one, you hit a wall or a ceiling where you know you're not going to make any more money.
Yeah.
And in fact, you might not even make the same bonus you did last year because the company's getting cheaper
Yep.
and making the targets harder to hit. So
Right.
you might actually lose income from where you were, and nobody
Yeah.
ever wants that. Regardless, people do hit a ceiling with income. The other big piece on this side is your flexibility. And it's funny, a lot of people talk about financial freedom. You hear it everywhere, right? Financial freedom. I have a thing called free do. Take off the M. It's not dumb. Take
Hmm.
off the M. It's free do. So,
Hmm.
what everybody wants is you want to be free to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And you want the to be free to make the most amount of money that you can possibly make. And business ownership gives you a very unique way to do it, especially for people that are going to be first-time bosses. We
Yeah.
didn't talk about it, but the majority of my clientele are first-time business owners. I got an introduction over the weekend. A friend of mine that's a very successful, he's become a friend of mine over the years. He's become a very successful franchise owner. He literally refers 1 to 5 people to me every single month. It seems like without fail. And he
Yeah.
sent me this amazing couple over the weekend. I spoke to the couple on the phone on Sunday, and we spent an hour together. Normally, my first calls are as little as 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I feel like if it's only 20 minutes, we'll spend a lot more time. Next time, I let it kind of flow naturally. But this couple obviously heard a lot of good things about me already. So they were very safe and comfortable sharing everything. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
And the more information I get, the easier it gets. But yeah, they're going to look at home health care. And they're fed up for all the reasons that you're talking about. But
Yeah.
she was very clear. My husband will run the business because he's really fed up. I'm
Hmm.
okay. I'm still making good money. So he's going to jump out and do this business full time.
Hmm.
So there's always a different story, but the point is it's some sort of pain that people are feeling that nobody wants that. I did speak to a gentleman the other day that was very curious about the things I was talking about,
Hmm.
but in the end he admitted, you know, I don't really have a need for a business now, but I was so curious to talk to you. Well, sure, I could get him into a business, but there's no urgency for him to get into a business. He said he has
Right.
enough money. He had another business. He had rental properties and all these different things he had going on. So, and I told him point blank, and I said, well, you don't have a motivation to buy a business. And this isn't easy. I mean, I don't think it's that difficult, but
Yeah.
being a first time business owner in a way is like losing weight. There's work.
Hmm.
Why are people not successful losing weight? I know people that hire a nutritionist and hire a personal trainer and they still fail.
We don't
Well,
do the
guess
work.
what?
Yeah.
They don't do the work,
Right.
and they don't have that team on their payroll for life.
Hmm.
Well, franchising, as long as you're active in your franchise, you have a franchise agreement, you have a team for life. And the best franchises, they're your personal trainers for your business at all times.
Yeah. Well, this has been really good, Lance. I want to ask you too, if people want to reach out, find out more, they want to check out your YouTube channels, where can they
Yeah.
go to find out, learn more from you?
Thank you. On YouTube, it's just my name, Lance Graulich, Graulich. That'll be in the meeting notes. And
Yeah.
Franchise Road Trip is another YouTube channel, and my podcast, Ion Franchising. So every Friday, I talk to founders on Ion Franchising, EYE on franchising, and also resources for the industry. But Wednesdays, I have a brand new series that's a lot of fun called Franchise Envy,
Okay.
also on the podcast. And Franchise Envy, I talked to successful, happy franchisees and how they did it. And I ask them all the questions that any prospective business owner is going to want to know.
Yeah.
Why'd you pick this brand? What'd you do before? And how much money do you make?
Yeah.
So all the things that people want to know, right?
Right.
But you can go to lancegraulich.com. That's one of my websites. You can find me there, and happy to talk to anybody.
All right. Well, thank you, Lance. If you're listening to this, go to his YouTube channel, go to his website, Lance Graulich. Thank you again, Lance, and let's keep in touch, okay?
My pleasure, Ryan. Thank you for having me.
Hey, this is Ryan with the Business Stories Podcast. And if you're a franchisor, franchise consultant, broker, or just a small business owner, you've got to check out clienttether.com. It's an amazing sales automation tool that is revolutionizing the industry. If you want to learn more, go to clienttether.com and inquire within.